All right, hello everybody. Before we start and before I introduce you our speaker for today, I wanted to make a very exciting announcement. So you probably all know that we got word from the APA of acceptance as posters for next year's conference. And let me tell you that Einstein residents had 20 posters accepted. So it's going to be very exciting to go there. We have posters from Dr. Mona, Sherry Chandy, Carrie Myers, Marie, Kyle, Phil, Joni, Rebecca, Carl, Zeb, Marisa, and Allah. So it's very exciting that we are going to represent Einstein so high. So you guys are awesome. That's really good. Now back to our speaker for today. So it turns out I know our speaker for how many years? 14? Since 2003. So Dr. Napalinga is a child adolescent psychiatrist. She has been working with children and their families in the outpatient, inpatient, and emergency settings for more than 14 years by now. She has been with Einstein Healthcare Network since 2012, and she served as the Associate Medical Director of the CRC child side in 2016. She's currently an instructor in psychiatry and human behavior at the Thomas Jefferson and in Einstein Medical Center residency programs. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Psychology and her medical degree from the University of the Philippines. And she then completed specialty and subspecialty training here in Albert Einstein Medical Center. She was just one class above mine and Dr. Rivera's class. And then she did her fellowship at Drexel University. Dr. Napalinga is, of course, board certified in general psych and child adolescent psychiatry, and her interests include mood and anxiety disorders, autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and the interface between psychiatry and technology. It's very exciting to have her here today. She's going to be talking to us about the importance of play, there it is. And I'm going to ask all the residents to please move forward as Dr. Napalinga is going to be playing a game with you guys. So sit in the front, please. And thank you. So join me to welcome Dr. Napalinga.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. So as Caroline said, feel free to move forward. That way when we do our exercises later to wake you up during meal time from your postprandial sedation, it'll be easier. So today we're going to talk about a topic that is so commonplace, so universal, so ubiquitous, that it's easy for a lot of people to ignore, and that is play. You see it in animals, you see it in people from all countries, all cultures, but it's never been as important as it is now. And my hope is that by the end of my talk today, I will be able to convince you that it would be a huge, if not fatal mistake to take play for granted, but that it is also essential for our development, our life, our evolution, and arguably even the survival of the species. So aside from that, my hope is that by the end of our talk today, you will be able to explain why play is essential to development, why it's beneficial to parents and their children, that you'll be able to identify various factors in society that have endangered or threatened play in our kids, and finally, that you'll be able to name ways by which you can advocate for the rescue of free play in family, schools, and our communities. So since we were talking about evolution and the survival of the species, I would like to introduce you to an evolutionary biologist, and his name is Gordon Burkhart. That's Dr. Burkhart. And the reason that we're talking about Dr. Burkhart today is because he's one of the evolutionary biologists that studied the most species in the animal kingdom when it comes to play. So he's proven through his studies that animals that were before thought incapable of play can actually play. And he was the first guy to prove that even cichlid fish, the species where tilapia belongs to, even they can play. So his definition of play is that it's repeated behavior that is incompletely functional in the context or at the age in which it's performed, and it's initiated voluntarily when the animal or person is in a relaxed or low stress setting. So it's seemingly aimless, it's initiated by the person doing it. And even animals can do it, and most especially people. So in this next slide, you'll see a lot of the animals that Dr. Burkhardt studied. And actually, there in the first slide, you'll see the cichlid fish that made him famous. It's seemingly pushing around this thermometer and seems to be having fun doing it without any sort of purpose. And then on the right side, you'll see a couple of spiders. They're Australian jumping spiders. And in a 2017 study, they found out that these jumping spiders actually play some kind of peekaboo game before they mate. And actually, if they don't play this game, and if the male spider doesn't play long enough or properly enough with the female spider, he either gets eaten or he just doesn't score. So it's very bad for him. So, and then the very last slide over there is just my cat Oscar doing what he does best. So then, all right. Meanwhile, in the University of California, Berkeley, a neuroscientist by the name of Dr. Marion Diamond was studying rats and their brains in the 1960s. So as a result of her studies, she became one of the first scientists to prove that the brain is neuroplastic and that it can regenerate. And in describing the results of her study, she coined the phrase, use it or lose it. So what did Dr. Diamond do? She basically got some rats, divided them into two groups. So she put a group of rats in two settings. One was what she called an enriched environment, where she put many rats together in a huge cage with many sources of food and water, and little mazes and little holes that they can crawl in and out of. And then there was this one poor rat that she put in a smaller cage all by himself, with just one source of food and water. But unfortunately, it wasn't quite a happy ending for all these rats because they got sacrificed in the name of science. So what Dr. Diamond did was she dissected the brains of the rats and studied the brain cells. And then she found that the rats that were placed in the enriched environment not only had greater cortical thickness, but they also had more dendritic connections. So you can see like the huge differences between the brain cells of the rats there. And that's why through her study, she proved that nurturing the brain helps enrich it and helps it grow better. And that's why she said use it or lose it. So through Dr. Burkhardt's studies, Dr. Diamond's studies, and a lot of other scientists, we've just proven that both nature and nurture support that play is important. So through Dr. Diamond's study, she also indirectly proved that play is an enriching experience that has an effect on the brain of both animals and human beings. And this point is actually emphasized even more in this next video from Harvard Center for the Developing Child. We tried to get this video to work earlier, but it did not quite work out, so we're going to use this outside link.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, Billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
Let me just shift back to our PowerPoint. So what I didn't get to add earlier is something that you probably already know from your biology classes as far as nature is concerned, is that traits that are deemed to be important to the survival of the species get preserved, and traits that are deemed useless or even harmful eventually diminish over time. And that also adds support to our premise that nature supports play, because if it survived through all those invertebrate species and mollusks and fish, and even us, then there must be some use to it. And it must be essential for survival. So going back to evolution, many studies have found that play is useful for these purposes in animals, and later on you'll find out that in humans too. So in animals, studies support that they help establish social rank, they help teach social rules, they help young animals practice adult tasks, they establish motor coordination, they promote social bonding, they help manage stress, and they help develop cognitive and creative skills. So in human studies, they found that specifically undirected play or free play, play that is not directed by adults, that children create themselves, gives these benefits. So children who are able to free play are able to work in groups, they learn to share, they learn to negotiate, resolve conflicts, advocate for themselves, make decisions, move at their own pace, discover interests, pursue these interests, create, explore the world around them, conquer their fears, and build confidence and resilience. So lots of benefits. And then as far as parents are concerned and their relationships with their children, if you combine loving, consistent caregivers and promote their play with their children, then you can form appropriate and effective relationships. So specifically, the benefits in parenting are that the parents are able to see their children's vantage point better. They're able to reassure their children that they're paying attention to them, that they're also promoting better communication, and they're given more opportunities for gentle nurturing guidance. And as for the less verbal children, their parents are able to understand them better through the way they play. And overall, it just promotes better engagement between parents and caregivers and their kids. And in school, if children are able to free play in school, then it shows that the school cares about the kids' cognitive development. And they are able to educate the kids with emotional skills and social skills. And studies have also shown that kids who can free play in school are better adjusted the school settings, they have better learning skills. They're more ready to learn when it comes to the structured lessons, and that they have better problem-solving skills than kids who weren't allowed to free play as much. So what happens when kids don't get to have as much free play? So some of the answers to these questions are given by a psychologist from the San Diego State University. Her name's Dr. Jean Twenge. And she basically is interested in comparing one generation from another. So in this case, she compared people from the 1990s, 1991 specifically, to the new millennials up to the year 2015. So her studies came out late 2017, early 2018. So she took 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, gave them some questionnaires, and found some trends in these questionnaires. She found, for example, that 8th to 10th graders appear to be lonelier than people in the 1990s, especially after 2012. And then in another trend, she found out that people after 2012 seemed not to hang out with their friends as much and preferred to stay home than other generations before them. And she was very surprised and shocked about these trends because the steep declines and steep increases were not like any other trends from the generations before. So although the kids from the new millennium seem to be safer physically in that they stayed home more and they didn't engage in as much sex as their predecessors, they were also more miserable. And that's even more pronounced in this graph. So this is another study now. She gave the kids a 6-item rating scale for depression, and then she plotted the number of kids who scored 3 and higher. And same trends as before. After 2012, steep declines. So even more pronounced in females than in males. So Dr. Twenge actually blames this on the invention of the iPhone in 2007, which is another lecture for another time. However, this led her to question, why, aside from the cell phone invention, why these sudden trends and why such steep increases and declines? And actually, it wasn't just Dr. Twenge that noticed that these increases and declines were happening. For example, even the CDC in an early study in 2018 showed that the suicide rate doubled between 10 to 19-year-olds. For example, in 2007, it was just 3.9 out of 100,000, and then in 2016, it became 6.1. And in 10 to 14-year-olds, it tripled in girls and then doubled in guys. And then in a national survey on drug use and health, they found a 50% increase in clinical level depression from 12 to 17-year-olds from just 2011 to 2015 alone. And then in another 2018 study published in the journal Pediatrics, they found that the percentage of patients seen in US children's hospitals from 2008 to 2015 for suicidal thoughts or attempts nearly doubled. So all very similar results from all different groups of researchers. So which brings us to Dr. Twenge's further studies in examining the causation for these trends. So she basically refers to a rating scale developed in the 1950s by Dr. Julian Bronner, where he examines locus of control in people, people's sense of control over what they do. So there's two kinds. There's internal locus of control and there's external. And people who have an internal locus of control are more likely to say that trusting to fate has never worked out for me, and what usually serves me better is making a decision about what I'm planning to do and sticking to my plan. And people with an external locus of control will say, you know, fate's fate, what's gonna happen is gonna happen no matter what I do. So Dr. Twenge used a modified scale of Dr. Rotter's scale and gave this to the 8th to 12th graders. So she found that from kids from the 1960s to 2002 had very different locus of controls in that the shift was from internal to external, so significant that she found that the average young person in 2002 was more external than were 80% of people in the 1960s. So again, she started asking questions. Why the shift in the locus of control? What happened? So she started looking at people's goals, and she found that there was an equivalent shift from intrinsic goals to extrinsic goals. So the difference is that people with intrinsic goals are more concerned with, you know, developing their sense of self, gaining more competencies, more skills, and coming up with, you know, a good philosophy in life that will lead them, you know, as they move through their evolution or their development. And people with extrinsic goals are more concerned about gaining more money, power, prestige, wealth, and having more good looks. And so then she questioned why, you know, why this sudden shift in goals from people. So another psychologist, Dr. Peter Gray from Boston, had a theory that this shift in goals that Dr. Twenge found is attributable to a decrease in free play, an increase in more time in schools, and an increase in more value or weight placed in people going to school and engaging in more school-like activities, structured activities that were directed by adults and are less child-centered. And he started examining evidence that lent credence to his theories. And he came up with these theories because he stated that play is intrinsic in nature. You know, when you're playing and you're leading your own play, you're trying to get along with others, you're trying to be a better player so that you can have more fun and you can get more people to play with you. So he did find the evidence. For example, in this study of kids from 1981 to 1987, the researchers from Michigan found that there was a decrease in play of 509 minutes during this time period, while there was an increase in the number of minutes spent in school and school-related activities. And then there was also an increase in time shopping with their parents. So, go figure. Other studies that support it are the study from Hofer and Sandberg from 1981 to 1997. These are the same people who found the trends earlier with a decrease in play. And in another study, they found that in 6 to 8 year olds, there was a 25 decrease in time spent playing. 55% decrease in time spent talking to people at home, 19% decrease in time spent watching TV. And then on the reverse side, there was an increase in time spent in school by 18%, 145% increase in time spent doing schoolwork at home, 168% increase in time spent shopping with their parents again. So Euler et al. Followed up on the previous study and extended it to the new millennium, 2003. And they found the same kinds of trends that the previous researchers found, except children even had more time spent in school and doing school-like activities. And then time in sports and outdoor activities actually declined, where in the previous slide, they had increased. And then there was far more time spent in computer-related activities and families who had computer access and internet access. This is just 2003. So in my search, no one actually bothered to find out what happens next. So I'm curious. So if any of you are curious, go find out. So there was another study about recess related to the time spent in school. And Pellegrini and Bone found out that in 1989, schools, 96% of school systems, K to 12, had at least one recess period. One recess period. In 1999, this got reduced to just 70%. So again, no follow-up studies. So I don't even know what the percentage now is, but at least these guys found that there was a decrease. So Dr. Gray's take-home message is that when you decrease free play in kids, there's an increase in narcissism, depression, and anxiety because there is a decrease in the sense of personal control, as evidenced by the shift in the trend for locus of control. So, not to end with doom and gloom, what can we do about these trends? So, we can actually do a lot. So, as clinicians who every day come into contact with parents, caregivers, and their kids, we can promote free play as a healthy or essential part of childhood. We can discourage parents from the overuse of passive entertainment where kids aren't using their creativity or imagination. I'm not saying cut it out completely. I'm just saying use it in moderation. So actually, the American Pediatric Association recommends a maximum of 2 hours of screen time a day. Beyond that, it becomes harmful. So we can encourage the use of true toys that encourage creativity and imagination, like blocks and dolls. And we can advocate for the development of safe spaces in underserved communities. For example, using school and church playgrounds during downtime, for example, on weekends when it's not so busy, so kids can play. And then finally, we can support community resources, institutions, and leaders that promote free play and healthy childhood development. And then, aside from advocacy, we can also educate our patients and their kids and emphasize that active play or free play has a lot of advantages and produces healthy, fit young bodies. We can educate them about free play and unscheduled time being protective of children's assets, and that it increases resilience. We can praise and reinforce the efforts of parents or caregivers who actually play with their kids and encourage free play in them. And finally, we can be available to parents as a sounding board or a guide to help them evaluate what their kids need and what they can do better. We can also create or act or come up with things. So, for example, we can help parents organize play groups for kids as young as 2.5 to 3 years old, because it's during this time that they start doing cooperative play in learning how to socialize with one another. We can create a guide for community resources that can help promote free play and distribute these to our patients, parents, caregivers. And finally, like I said earlier, generate additional research. Look into it. Look at the trends. See what has changed through time. And look at interventions and what their effects are. And, study kids in different settings, different environments with different needs, and their patterns of play, and what kind of play they need. How much school time do they need? And how much school-like activities do they need? Because, of course, as with everything, it's always about balance. So, last but not least, we need to play. We need to be good examples to our patients and their kids and have a good work-life balance. And we need to play with our kids or any kids that we do come into contact, whether in our personal or professional lives. That being said, let's play. So we're going to end with an activity. So there's quite a lot of us. So I think it would be good to divide into 3 groups. So we're gonna have a 5-minute contest. So this is gonna be one of those pop-up games. So I'm going to start organizing into groups, 3 groups, and choose a group leader who will represent your group.
Was he like, oh, you have to land and send a little bit of
One bed, and it's yours. For being brave enough. So next, one table for you. You're also the secretary, or you can execute. Wait, we're not done yet. All right, guys. So you can go back to your booth now. Oops, the mic wasn't working before. But you can hear me from the back, right? All right, cool. So here's the contest. I will start the timer, and in 5 minutes, I give each group an item that you will use for the contest. In 5 minutes, you have to come up with as many games as you can think of involving the paper clips. And the group who lists the most games for the paper clips wins their award.
Do we have to actually play the games?
No, just think of the games. You can play the games if you want afterwards. But, let me know when you're ready. Alright, ready, get set, go!
Do we have the title or something?
Right on the title. Alright, start tallying your total. No cheating. You guys are more me. 55 from group 3. No. How many?
27.
27? 27 from group 3. 19 from group 2. 30 from group 1. More competitive. All right. So, would you mind coming up here and doing a quick rundown?
We have med students who don't have skills. They didn't come up with ideas. Let's see what this is.
Hello. What am I doing up here? Just reading my list? Alright, we got paperclip football, paperclip chain, hide the paperclips, spelling, Pictionary, make a tower, use them as money, Monopoly, hangman, jewelry, fighting with paperclips, guessing how many paperclips there are, decorating with paperclips, paperclip origami, coming up with games about paperclips using paperclips, doing stuff with magnets and paperclips, darts, long jump, hairstyling, playing house when the one paperclip didn't do the dishes and the other one gets angry at the other paperclip. Paperclip radiologist, where you swallow paperclips and then you take an x-ray and see if you can find the paperclip. Piercing things with paperclips. How many paperclips can you fit in your ear? Making s'mores with paper clips. Jacks, paperclip frogs, pickup clips, like pickup sticks, you know? Paperclip sword fight, poker, making shapes out of paper clips, and that's all.
Oh, where's my mic? Nice job, everybody. But I want to look at your list anyway, so you could submit your. So I'm going to give my much treasured gel pens to the you the whole box. It's the right answer. So basically that exercise was just to give you a little sampler, as I'm sure all of you have experienced when you were kids playing out there. You know, how much play can enhance imagination, creativity, and et cetera, et cetera. So today we learned what the definition of play is, specifically free play. We learned why it's important to our evolution, development, and possibly the survival of our species and other species. And finally, third, we learned what happens when you don't play, and fourth, what can we do about it.
So I'd love you to remind everybody about Friday.
Oh, yeah. So next Friday, we'll be here again. 8 o'clock, we'll be at Moss Rehab Conference Room 1.
Yes.
We're going to watch a very, very, very interesting movie. Part of I think he's the director. It's Robert De Niro's son, but that's beside the point. Anyway, it's an important topic that's as equally essential to our survival as play is. So screening 8 to 9 a.m. Moss West Conference Room. And then we'll have a multidisciplinary panel discussion over here from 12 to 1. And I hope you can all join us. So it's a joint screening.
So the screening was moved from Moss 1.
Yes.
Please come at, think of 7:45. I know it's early, but think of 7:45 because we have to get out of the room by 9. It's an hour-long movie, and so we want to start promptly at 8. And there's no chance to start at 8 if half of you are coming in at 10 Einstein time. So try to come in at 8. Be there. I think 7:45, so you get there by 8 and start the movie right.
And then not be in the morning report on Friday and stay back 15 minutes after 1 over here because Dr. Noble wants to give a talk only for residents.
So I have a question. So you very nicely laid out the literature that shows that there are these horrible trends in depression and suicide in youngsters and so on. Presumably that carries over into adults, and we know that suicide rates continue to go up and deaths of despair continue to rise, and there's groups of Americans now who have a shorter life expectancy, first time ever. Okay. If play is so obvious and important, why do we have to advocate for play? What has happened that we've gotten sucked in, that society is getting sucked into eliminating one of these essential needs?
Because it appears that not everyone knows, as I mentioned at the first part of the lecture, people take it for granted, or they just haven't been exposed to studies showing how important it is. And that's why we, who are actually exposed to that body of knowledge, need to advocate to the lay people, our lawmakers, and politicians, teachers, school administrators, about the importance of play, because they're the ones kind of contributing to its extinction. So that's our role.
Actually, like a comment on that. Have you guys heard like the marshmallow game? There's this like sociology test where you have to basically have toothpicks and you have to use the marshmallows to make like the largest tower, I think it is. And I forgot what age it is. I think it's like kindergartners. But kindergartners always win next to CEOs and entrepreneurs and business executives because the thought is as you get older, presumably you're too fearful of making mistakes and looking dumb, and so you sacrifice that time of playing and trying new things, and actually the kids always win. So, which suggests that as we get older, we can't be comfortable being uncomfortable and being vulnerable. And there's this internal dialogue or judgment that goes on. So I think whatever is happening in society to do that probably also contributes.
Yes, and actually there's a body of studies out there about adults and play, but that's another lecture for another time. It's equally important in adults and in kids.
Is there any information about how much time is spent playing with parents versus playing with peers?
They only have Dr. Twangy only studies studied the one about going out with your friends and staying with your parents. But they found that time actually spent playing with parents has gone down as well.
I was thinking about the principal task, time spent playing increases both parents are out of the house working.
There you go.
Society feels like you get more money and you have to figure out how you want to get to school, so you have to go to preschool and you have to do kindergarten. And everything is about achievement.
And, or parent, or everyone's on their phone and not playing with each other.
It's like well-meaning intention, but standardized test too. It's a more extrinsic result than
Right.
intrinsic.
Any more questions? Comments, violent reactions?
I was just going to say really quickly, I read an article about how in the 80s and 90s there were more toys that were out for kids that actually made kids think about, like for example, Legos and Kinects. And
Simple
things like
toys.
that. Right. Yeah. Whereas nowadays the toys that come out are related to the cartoons that they see on TV, and they're not actually, doesn't facilitate any type of interaction or creativity really.
Well, because the context is already preset. It's preset in the context of the cartoons versus, a generic doll where you can make anything out of it, really. And also, there was another study that found that later trends showed that play has become associated with devices versus, just making whatever you have out of the environment ever since the computer was invented. Not even, the iPhone thing, but like ever since the computer was invented in the 80s. I'm talking about the personal computer, not like the huge, database type computers. But ever since the personal computer entered into homes, play has been associated with electronics and devices. So, any more?
I've noticed that a lot of children nowadays come to us with behavioral issues at school. One of the topics that I was looking at was unstructured play between parents and children and how that helps modulate behavior. Can you?
Absolutely. And that's actually one of the main points that I had in my slides earlier. A lot of studies have shown that parents who free play with their kids, meaning they don't say, hey son, build a robot or make a house out of these magnetic blocks. No, they are the boss. They make the agenda. So parents who free play with their kids are able to understand them better, communicate with them better, bond with them better, and also unwittingly educate them better. So studies do support that. And as Yoni pointed out earlier in his question, that time has